Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Non-Clinical Collective. We are here today with Chris. And if those of you were not able to join us, this is actually going to be an encore session to Chris's recent presentation at the Beyond the Clinic virtual conference. Within the conference, Chris talked to us about medical legal consulting and different strategies and advice, tips, tricks for PAs, NPs, or other healthcare professionals that may be interested in getting into this as a side hustle. And during the session, Chris, there was a ton of questions. A lot of people were really engaged, and we just simply ran out of time. So I'm so happy that we were able to make time to have you come back on. And we're going to answer some of these questions from the session. And then, Chris, if there's anything additional that you wanted to add, any other tips and tricks, we'll be posting this not only to our non-clinical collective community, but also to the podcast feed. So, Chris, thank you for coming back. And what I want to do, very similar to the Beyond the Clinic presentation, if you want to just give a little bit of a background, I want to make sure if people are joining us fresh without hearing your original presentation, that they know who you are and what you do. So if you want to just give a little bit of your background and what you do and how you got into medical legal consulting.
Yes. So my name's Chris Cannell. I've been a PA for almost 22 years. Started out my career in orthopedic surgery. Pretty quickly, after a couple of years, went into emergency medicine, for which I've been doing since. I've been a guy who's always wants to be busy and always wants to wear multiple hats and have multiple different skills. So I've moonlighted as a hospitalist. I've done outpatient ambulatory care, a little bit of primary care, but mostly urgent care. I was a APC director at that very large ambulatory care organization, but really had a yearning to get back into the hospital environment. And so, whereas I was once full-time ER, I had gone to more of a moonlighting role and then went back to the ER back in 2012. And I've been there ever since. And I've been involved in many different roles there with ultrasound rollout for the acute care platform for PAs and NPs throughout the hospital, which is really what we use both in the ER and the critical care setting. I've been involved in a lot of different population health initiatives, multiple different committee work, operations, a P&T committee, and a microbial committee, APC leadership. I'm currently leading a big drive in our health system towards APC leadership and just change for the APC sort of leadership infrastructure and just creating opportunities. We just did a big survey monkey and just really trying to sort of understand where we're at as an organization, and then been involved back into orthopedics again, doing some more moonlighting there. I do lots of precepting of students. So I've been precepting students since 2007, mostly with where I'm adjunct faculty with Tufts and Northeastern PA schools, but I've taken students from all different PA schools. And then sort of talking about sort of what I do with the side hustle, which is the medical legal consulting, healthcare consulting, educational consulting. Really had a malpractice attorney reach out to me in 2017. As you know, the numbers are what they are, is that we're all susceptible to a malpractice case at some point in a career. And I work in a very high risk specialty. And unfortunately, I was subjected to a lawsuit myself. And it was very demoralizing. It was very fatiguing. It was depressing, all the range of emotions, looking back, what could I have done differently, etc. And ultimately, I thankfully was found that it was ruled in my favor, that the case went well, and so well that the malpractice attorneys that represented my institution and me wanted to use me as an expert witness. And it really opened my eyes to how I can make a difference in both my practice, my colleagues' practice, my students' practice, my organization's practice, but also the healthcare system as a whole, how I can improve care through being a medical expert witness and doing that legal work. And it's been very rewarding. I think people sort of look at it as if maybe you're going against your colleagues, but that's not actually true. You're just reviewing cases. You're providing your opinion on the standard of care. You're not swayed one way or the other if you're working for the plaintiffs or defense side. You're just commenting on the standard of care, and in such, you're improving healthcare. You're improving, contributing to risk mitigation strategies. You're improving the care all around. So that's the long-winded answer of my career and how this work has come to be. And I can certainly talk about the educational consulting and the healthcare consulting as well at the end.
Yeah, great. So, what I'd like to do, once again, just to make sure we're not leaving anyone behind, is I'm actually pulling up your learning objectives right now. And I just want to kind of give a brief overview. We don't have to redo the entire presentation because certainly people can access it if they'd like to. But just the presentation that you gave at the Beyond the Clinic virtual conference, you focused on three key things. You talked about the standard of care and just the basic structure of medical legal in terms of what is required to have a malpractice lawsuit, what criteria need to be met. You talked about how to apply our knowledge as clinicians. So, what our role can be in terms of our clinical expertise, our perspective, and how that can play a role in the medical legal process. And then just the importance of kind of standing in the gap. I think just being brave and kind of doing the uncomfortable thing and jumping in, and that everybody has to start from somewhere. I think so often there's this imposter syndrome where we as clinicians feel, well, I spent my entire training, my entire livelihood has been in the clinic, in the ER. So how the heck am I going to be in a courtroom and get depositioned or cross-examined? And I think it was really inspiring just of what you talked about in your presentation of just how to get into that and how to get started. So I'll give you a chance if there's anything else you want to add as I'm trying to maybe just give some of the key points from your presentation, but I'm hoping I'm doing a good enough job of enticing people that haven't seen your presentation to go check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the same concept with so many different things that are consistent with this event. And I'll sort of take this down to like the level of like, you know, I do a lot of endurance athlete training, endurance training. I coach girls lacrosse, and I say the same thing to everybody. You know, people say I can never run a marathon, or I could never run a 5K, or I can't catch and pass like that person. Well, it's like everything else. You just got to dive in, and it's really daunting. It really is daunting. And I think especially with the medical legal work, like the lawyers can be very, they can really try to get under your skin. They can really try to get you to answer a certain way, and you just have to be a professional. You have to be you have to just comment on the facts. And I think, and that's what we're trained to do. I mean, we're trained as clinicians to know the medical facts, to know to examine the chart, to examine the reasoning behind things, and that's what we're trained to do. And if you're trained to do that, and you can be a professional, you can do this. I promise you. It's just getting over that fact. Well, I can't do that. I can't sit in front of a deposition or jury. Like, yeah, it is tough. My first several times doing it, it was tough, but you get over it. Just like you get over training for that 5K. You get over, your first year or two out of practice. It was uncomfortable, but you eventually get comfortable.
All right, fine. You've convinced me. I'm going to go home and get a run in. All right, so let's get to some of the questions. So these are all questions from your presentation, and we're going to start with Matt's question. So great question here. How do you determine your initial rates for your first case?
Yeah, that's a great question. I use multiple different resources. So there are many great patriarchs in the PA field, for example, who really I use those resources. So when I first got it started, I became a member of PAs in legal medicine, for which I'm now the president of, because I have a lot of skin in the game. I really like what we do, and I was approached to be the president, and it's been really a lot of great work. But there are some great patriarchs who have been doing this for a long time. If I can just name a couple who are just absolute icons in the field: Jeff Nicholson, Randy Danielson, Jim Burkett, Peter Berger, who's actually a PA and an attorney. They have served as great assets for me in the beginning when setting my rate. And I sort of just reached out to them because, we as an organization, we don't publicize rates, and the rates are very variable. It's based upon your experience. What's the current market? There might be a different market for ER as it is for psych, for example. So you just have to sort of, and I sort of said this in the beginning, network. You have to meet with people, talk with people, because these are not publicizable rates. And I'm happy for people to sort of reach out to me if they'd like, and we can sort of talk about what would be good rates for you, for example, based upon your experience, what discipline you're in, for example. Someone had reached out to me last week about this, and I was able to have a good conversation with them because I want to give back. I want to help people because those same people help me. And I really think it's very helpful to do that. So
Great. On the Non-Clinical Collective app, we actually have an article. I don't know if it's posted yet, but I'll make sure it's posted to coincide with this. That just gives a basic structure and overview of how to set rates. It doesn't give what rates you should have. As you said, it's highly variable, but that document is a good one. And if you take a look at it on the NCC, I'd certainly love to have you comment if you agree with it or disagree or different approaches, but it does at least give an overview of how to approach this. So it's another resource that everyone can check out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm very happy to sort of discuss that and sort of contribute to, what are the basic concepts of a rate sheet and what you give to an attorney. And there's different ways to go about this. You can do a training course, like a legal studies course, which people can get a certification in that. And then there's also, Seek does a really good training program. Those are good options, but you don't necessarily need to do that, to be honest with you. It's all depends on how you want to proceed with certifications and credentials.
Great. Wonderful. All right, Tracy here. Next question says, I'm interested to hear the reasoning why attorneys can advertise so readily and providers working in the medical legal space can't advertise and can only network. Wonderful, wonderful question.
Yeah. So this is a topic that also the patriarchs really educated me on, and for which I also want to really stress as well. They want you to be a credible witness. They want you to be someone who is genuine, that's not swayed by a particular side's plaintiffs or defense. Who is so I so that is you will see certain people who are on LinkedIn, for example, who do a lot of talking, but are not specifically advertising their services. If that makes sense, they're basically they're talking about cases to some degree. The goal for you is not so much to do more expert witness work. It's to basically to combine that with what else you're doing, because there has to be a good balance. And so that advertising component to it is that right balance, that you are not a hired gun, that you are, this is not your main job, because they will try to discredit you. And I think that's really the main part of it. So the goal of doing this type of work as an expert witness specifically is this really shouldn't be a full-time job for you. There are some people who are retired who are doing a lot of this work, but it's not their full-time job per se. They're doing some sort of academic work as well, or they're doing some other consulting as well, or they're in the emeritus status. So it's looked at a little bit differently, but that is the real rationale behind it.
Excellent. And I'm going to actually plug another resource here. So there's a great podcast that I listen to called The Non-Clinical Physician. And they did an episode a while back, and I'm going to post it on here. So it was episode 347. It was, the title of it is Priceless Advice for the New Expert Witness. And it interviews a physician attorney combo, and they talk on this exact topic. And Chris, I think if I'm remembering correctly, I may have actually sent you this episode when I listened to it. I think it was one of my medical legal friends. I was running and I listened and I said, oh my gosh, this is so good, and sent it off. So if it wasn't you, then it was one of my other medical legal friends. But a great resource, another great episode that specifically gives about a 10-minute discussion about why you shouldn't advertise as a physician or healthcare professional that is in this space. Awesome. So let's go to Sadia. Where can you look up these established standards of fees by specialty? So I know we talked a little bit about fee structure, but I want to actually break that question down into more specialty. Is there going to be more variability in fee structure for this type of work based on specialty? And if so, how do you figure that out? Because I know you talked about a few patriarchs in the field. Presumably, they are not all just in one specialty. They may be in different places. So just maybe a little bit of commentary on the differences of specialty.
Yeah, so I think this is all about market, and what the current market is, and make sure the market saturated within a specific field, because that you may find that the attorneys and the insurance companies are not willing to pay. So just to clarify a couple points, from a defense side, if you're hired as a consultant from the defense side, your payment from comes from the insurance company. Whereas if you're getting paid from the plaintiff side, it really comes from their account. And so on the plaintiff side, they may have more flexibility when it comes to payment and picking experts because of that. Whereas defense side, sometimes they're going to be sometimes more restrictive based upon what the insurance approves. And so there might be more expert witnesses, for example, in the ER trade versus like that of dermatology or oncology space. So, for example, I spoke to an individual last week, and they work in like cosmetic dermatology and regular medical dermatology. There might not be as many experts in that field as a PA, for example, as an MP, for example. And so, so based upon that, their rates could be higher. So I recommended her to sort of look at that, maybe as her first case, to maybe start out a little bit lower. So once you sort of find that rate, to start out lower, and then once you get a little bit more experience in your belt, you can probably, in theory, charge more because of that specialty, and based upon the market. So it's a little bit of like gathering information, speaking to individuals, because it's not a publicized thing. You have to do your homework. And, if you speak to the right people, they will share their rates with you, and it will sort of help guide you.
I'm not in the medical legal space, but I think it's very similar, it sounds like, to consulting with the pharmaceutical industry, where there's a little bit of a veiled uncertainty of how to structure your rates, things like that. And the way that I like to think about it is start at whatever rate you think is appropriate. The way that I look at it is the replacement rate. I'm not going to work for less money than what I can make clinically. So
Right.
at the
Correct.
minimum, it has to be a slight premium versus my clinical rate. And if you get inundated with work and you're doing more work than you have the time to do, that's a good indicator that it's time to raise your rates. Because if you raise your rates by 25% or 30% and the amount of work that you're doing gets reduced by 25 or 30%, you're making the exact same amount of money. How busy you are, supply versus demand, I think is a nice way to kind of indicate if you are flooded with work, that probably means your rates are too low. And if you are not getting any work, that might mean your rates are too high.
And then maybe the same can be true as if you're not getting enough defense work, which you want to have the right balance of defense. You really want a 50-50 split. If you're getting not enough defense work, you might have to reconsider your rates. They might be too
Mm-hmm.
high.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're getting too much work, vice versa. So you're absolutely right. I think it's based upon what your clinical schedule looks like versus your side hustle schedule.
Great. All right. So Alexa asks, what medical legal consulting program do you recommend?
Yeah. So I will tell you that my education really happened in several different ways. So it was through my doctorate degree with the health law training and doing lots and lots of reading on the side and speaking to all of these great patriarchs. And I actually did not do any formal training in this space, but I did decide that I did enroll in a program that a bunch of my colleagues have done through APOM, through legalstudies.com. And that actually program was designed by one of our patriarchs, Jim Burkett, who used to be the program director at AT Still in Arizona. And so he actually sold it off to them. Um, that is a well-known program that that everyone I've seen and heard of has recommended, and it's pretty cost-effective, to be honest with you, as well. It's about $1,200, $1,300. I'm not sure if you can get your CME to cover that, but it is one that I'm now newly enrolled in. I'll be taking in a couple months, and I think it's about 6 to 8 weeks.
Excellent. All right. Polina asks, any recommendations as far as asynchronous positions?
So asynchronous position. So I think what they're referring to is, can you do like some sort of medical evaluation work with an attorney practice? I think that's what they're getting to. And the answer is yes. So there is a big profession out there called legal nurse consultants. These are nurses who have gone on from working clinically as a nurse to they actually work for law firms, or they work as independent contractors for law firms. And this is where I think there's a huge niche for PAs out there, MPs out there, physicians out there. There is work to be had, because a nurse really cannot comment on the standard of care to that of a clinician. But I think a clinician like a PA and MP, for example, can actually comment on the care provided by a physician as well, although not serve as a medical legal expert in the court of law for that, because it has to be that same profession. But you can actually do risk work. You can do medical review, chronology work. You can do merit work. These are all asynchronous positions, and there are PAs out there, for example, who are doing this work. And I actually do this work myself right now. I charge a lower rate for that work because it is more busy work. And to me, if a law firm is going to keep you employed doing this asynchronous work and it's plentiful, then it's worth your time to lower your rate so you can keep on getting that work. And it's a great asynchronous job, very flexible job, and it's much higher paying than that of a clinical job. And so I have ventured into that space, and I have a colleague of mine through APOM who actually really does that full time right now. And she's doing a great job with it. So I actually think this is a niche as a non-clinical field for a PA, MP, physical therapist. These are other options as well. PharmD, like you could do this type of work. And it's not just expert witness work. It's doing what we call in-house work for law firms. So I hope that this field will expand for healthcare professionals in the future beyond just nurses.
Very cool. All right, I've got two more for you. So Mary Kate asks, what survey websites are highest yield with pay? So just to give some context, within your presentation, you talked not only about medical legal consulting, but also an opportunity to do a lot of these medical surveys. And it's a really nice low-hanging fruit for clinicians to be able to add potentially a couple $1,000s to their bottom line. So for Mary Kate's questions, do you have any specific websites that you wanted to recommend?
Yeah. So opinion site, in crowd, guide point. I'm just I just want to make sure I have all these ones on my list here in front of me. Just bear with me. Here we go. So global research, M panels, all global circle. Those are all really, really good ones. There's also, other ones you can do. I have on my phone here that I do that I get texts as well that come my way. So Anthium Hub is a really good one. These are all like direct medical surveys that get sent right to your email. So you have to go to their websites and set up your profile. And although their AI component to these programs do a pretty good job of trying to filter in what is applicable to you, it's not always correct. And so that's where I did in my presentation about the sort of pluses and minuses of this. So there are a lot of ones that come my way that may not be a fit. Like they're looking for a physician, or they're looking for, it's not quite the fit. They think I do some healthcare administration work, but it's not really the right fit. But some are, and some of them actually do well. Like, you can get paid a very good rate, actually, in some extent, very similar to medical legal consulting work. The same similar rate as you're getting per hour, you can do like a live interview with them, a live feed with them, and actually get paid for that. Versus like like doing the in-crowd surveys, which are like 5, 10, 15 minutes, or like opinion site, which are a little bit longer. And then like the on the all global, they're a little bit longer as well. But you can get paid fairly well for these. I mean, some of these are paying $250 an hour, or $50 for 20 minutes or 15 minutes of your time. Those things add up. And if you think about, if you have some free time and you can fill out these surveys, again, talk about asynchronous non-clinical work. There are some people who actually work very hard and hustle at this, who make 20, 30, $40,000 a year. Although you have to report it from a tax standpoint, it is a good side hustle that you can do, and you're giving valuable input into the industry. In addition to that, you're networking. If you're speaking with people, you're being open to new areas, and you never know where it's going to lead for you. So I really think it's a great thing to do. Most of them are worth your time. And some of them give you cash as opposed to like a Amazon gift card or what. And some, you have to determine the sort of what's worth your time or not.
Yeah, I don't do any of them anymore, but early in my career, I used to do a lot of them. What's ended up happening now is I'm almost never eligible because I have conflict of interest
Right.
relationships with almost anything that they're discussing. So I'm too conflicted now. But towards the end of my reign or end of my time doing these medical surveys, I was getting busier and busier, and I was just kind of throwing numbers. So I did work with GuidePoint, and they're very good. And towards the end, the last few I did, they would harass me and email me, and they'd be like, well, what hourly rate can we offer you to have you contribute? And I would just think of the highest hourly rate. And a couple times they said no, and a couple times they said yes. So yeah, it's been a good experience. I just can't do it anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's okay, because you are going off and doing your own thing now, which you enjoy more, and it's a better, I'm not even sure I would call it a hustle for you at this point. I mean, it is another
Yeah,
part of your
correct. Yeah,
professional component of what you do.
I'm well diversified. I agree.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to point out what my primary employment is these days.
Right.
All right, final question for us. I've got Alexa here asking any recommendations on surveys, which we just talked about. Okay, and then she said, do you have thoughts on Opinion Site and Zoom RX? So I know maybe a little bit kind of in the weeds, but I'll ask that as our final question.
Yeah. So ZoomRx, Sermo, those are all other good websites that you can use as well. There's probably, I would say there's a list of about 10 that I would vet, and Sermo and ZoomRx are on those. And I know some people have various degrees of frustrations with certain ones, and I will tell you that it can be frustrating as a non-physician provider to sort of get the appropriate compensation in some of these spaces, because some of them, for reasons that are unclear, just want the opinion of a physician in a specialty like, oncology is the hottest one, right? Hematology, oncology. So, but on my, I will be publishing on my website and organizing this and vetting a bunch of companies that I know are the most reputable ones to go with.
Awesome. And here's my plug then is I hope once you get that on your website, you'll post that link to that website into our NCC group so that everyone can share it and join in on that.
Yeah, I'll definitely put it on my website and my social media, and we're definitely hoping to do some email blasts with my administrative team coming this weekend or the following weekend.
Perfect. Well, Chris, thank you so much. I know you and I both have busy schedules, so I'm very thankful for the time. I'm thankful that we were able to carve out and extend our conversation regarding medical legal consulting. I'm sure there will be other opportunities because, my goodness, there was so much engagement and so much interest in your topic. So thank you for lending your voice to this and lending your expertise. I think it's something that you're going to help a lot of people, and you already are doing so. So I'm excited to see us branching into other fields. I've talked many times with you about my passion for non-clinical work, and this is just such a great example of it. So thank you so much for sharing that, and I hope to have further conversations soon with you.
Absolutely look forward to it.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Chris.
All right, have a
All
good
right,
day.
so this was the Non-Clinical Collective. If you want to see this, if the whole presentation, if you want to see the Beyond the Clinic virtual, check out Non-Clinical Collective on Circle Communities.